Okay, so you chose to take a look to see how this is done AI style. So what I'm going to do, because perspective is the biggest issue with this, is I'm going to do this in conjunction with an actual AI puzzle. So in terms of how this is going to be done and how we're going to do this, a couple things to bear in mind. This 2x2x2 block is not correlated with this entire 2x2 block. It's only correlated with this corner, this edge, this edge, this edge, and these centers here. These do not represent any corners that you're going to find over here. These represent the inner 2x2 corners that you don't get with this kind of an AI puzzle. And as a matter of fact, this center here does not correlate with this center here. Instead, this center here correlates with these two pieces. These two pieces are like the centers of a supercube, a super 4x4 with two colors. So what is this center is actually these two pieces here. What's this center is actually these two pieces over here. And what's this center is actually these two pieces. These have to be coordinated individually. And the whole key is, as I'm putting in my 2x2x2 blocks, I have to match it with the inner 2x2 by 2 corner. So how the heck are we going to do that? Well, let's see if we can correlate it with this puzzle over here. Might as well start off with this corner. This is the yellow, orange, and blue. Yellow, orange, and blue. So the first step is take your corner and match it with an edge. So where's a blue and yellow? Looking for blue and yellow. Here's a blue and yellow here. Is this correct? And yes, it's correct. So I've made a 1x1x2 block. Now I'm just going to move this to the top, just like so. And then we'll move this guy in over here. Okay, so this is at the top over here. So that's simple enough. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. Let's move this down so it has the same pattern here. So I'm going to look for the blue and yellow, and it's right over here, so things are correlating really nicely. Whoop, that's the wrong one. So we got to find the right one, and that must be over here. Actually, blue and yellow. Blue and yellow, searching around for it. It's actually this one here. So 1, 2, splat. So it's over here. Now we just move this to the top. So same kind of thing. Put this here, and then we'll bring this up over to here. Okay. So the next step, now that we have these two in, is we want to make a 1x2x2 sheet. And that means taking this and matching it up with the orange and blue edge, and then taking the orange and blue edge and matching it up with the blue center. So that's easy enough. Here's an orange and blue edge. Is it the right one? I think we have two to choose from. If I move this down over here, I can see the blue is on this side. So then the blue will be here, then it'll be here. So this is actually the correct one, but I want to match it up with a blue center. So let's take this and turn this around so that the blue is facing the top here. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. And let's find any blue center to match it up with. How about this one over here? One, well, this is on the wrong side, so we simply have to move this to here. RD. So this is the very basic AI strategy, and boom. So now this is lined up over here. Once I've lined this up, I'm now going to move this to the middle to match up with this guy. Then I go splat. Now I've created my 1x2x2 sheet, and I simply move this up. Then we'll bring this guy over here. Okay, so here's my 1x2x2 sheet. How does that correlate with this? Well, once again, let's find an orange and yellow, orange and blue rather. You can see that there's one here, but it's the wrong one. So let's find the right one, which must be this guy over here. Now when I put it in, I have to also match it up with a center to make my sheet. Well, these aren't going to be the centers. This is the 2x2 corner. So I'm going to match my orange and blue. I'm going to make sure that the orange is matched up with an inner centerpiece here, an inner centerpiece, and that has to be orange and yellow. Orange and yellow. What I'm tempted to do is take this, move this here, then bring this over here. But before I do that, let's match this with a proper center. Now to match it with the proper center with this, I had to move it to where this was facing up, and then it found the center below it. Well, because this center that I want to match it up with correlates with what's going to go over here. What's going to go here. So I've got to match this with a orange and yellow, just like this will be orange and yellow. So where's an orange and yellow? And it's right over here. So I got to take this orange and yellow, let's take this orange and move it to the top so it can match with this. So R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. Here's an orange and yellow, I move it in, matches up nicely. So now I have this in the proper center. So I can't just do any orange, it's got to be orange and yellow. Why? Because this is going to match up with this over here. It's got to match up over here, orange and yellow. Now I'm going to take this and move it down to the center area over here. Okay, now that that's here, watch what's going to happen. Because now what's going to happen is this is going to come into here, and this yellow one is going to match up with this. So it works perfectly. I go splat, this matches over here, and you can also see that this yellow is in place and this is in place. So this thing, this here is actually my 1x2x2 sheet. So let's move this to the top so you can visualize that a little bit better. RD, RID, RD. Okay. So basically my 1x2x2 sheet is made up of a corner, two edges, and that's these two edges, and one center. And the center, which is on the top, moves with the top layer here. But the center here is not anywhere up here because it doesn't move with the top. The center is here. So this is the center. And as you can see, when I move my 1x2x2 sheet, this center moves with it, just like this one does. So that's the biggest skewing of your perspective, is just to understand that although these corners and these edges are the same, this center is correlated with this. So this is my 1x2x2 sheet over here. Okay, now for another little bit of a hurdle. To put in the next part is I find the orange and yellow. And once I find the orange and yellow, which is right over here, we have to make sure before we move it into here, I put in the proper edges, rather the proper centers. So one is a yellow center. I can find that practically anywhere. Move it into here and bang. So now this is in. Now that this is in here, I turn this upside down to match this with the orange center. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. So you can see this is upside down. So on this layer, as opposed to this layer, I'm now looking for an orange center, and I see one over here, but it doesn't match up with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this orange over here, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-D, and again, and go boom. So now I have this edge, center, one edge and two centers. Move this to the middle. D, R-I-D-I-R-D, and then I simply move my 1x2x2 sheet into here, and we have our 2x2x2 block. So how does that vary with this? Well, there is another kind of a tricky step, so let's work through it. Orange and yellow, let's find that first, and we can see it over here. Is it the correct orange and yellow? Well, orange is over here, then here. Yellow rather is over here, then here, and then here. So yes, okay. So we have to set it up with the proper centers first. So this center, when the orange is over here, when the orange and yellow is over here, this is going to match up with a center that's yellow and blue. And the orange that's here is going to match up with orange and blue. So it's always going to be blue that's going to be the mediator between the yellow and the orange. So here's the yellow. Let's find the proper center, and it's going to be yellow and blue. So match it up with a yellow and blue. Here's a yellow and blue over here. So all I got to do is go splat. So I have this in here. If it wasn't up here, I'd have to rotate it, and that's no problem. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to turn this upside down, and before I match this with the center by putting it on the bottom, now I put it on the top. Because what I'm going to be looking for is an orange and blue. Orange and blue. So where's an orange and blue? And it's right here, orange and blue. So I'm going to take this and turn this upside down. D-I-R-D. R-I-D-I-R-D. R-I-D-I-R-D. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take this and then move this in the proper direction. Move this orange up so it'll match with this orange over here. But I have to do one more critical step before I do that. Because if I put the 2x2x2 block of the 4x4 in, if I put this in the wrong 2x2, inner 2x2 corner, then I won't get a proper looking full 2x2x2 block. So the final center that I put in, which is going to be this orange and blue, I first have to put it into the proper 2x2x2 block. And which one is that going to be? Well, looking at the color of the edge here, the outer 4x4 edge is going to be the same as the color of the inner 2x2 corner. 4x4 corner rather. So it's going to be blue, yellow, and orange. And that's over here, blue, yellow, and orange. I've got to move this blue and orange into this proper corner. That's what I have to do first. So what I need to do is I need to spin this around so that this, and you have to move this on this level so that you can actually move it. This orange has to come over to here, so I got to move this orange over here. What that basically means is this that was already put in, if I start spinning this around, I might take this out. So what I need to do is I need to take this part out. I just need to move this out of the way. But I don't want to move this into here either. So this area here is going to move into here. Move into this 2x2x2 block. And again, that's because I have to move this out of the way, take it out of here. I can't have this into here. And I can't have this into here yet. So if I go 1, 2, this 1x2x2 block is out of the way. This is out of the way. And I just need to move this center into this corner area here. This blue will move to here. So let's take this blue and move it to here. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. So basically, I need to coordinate it where I move my last center into the 2x2 block. So now this blue and orange will move over here, and you can see this is matched up with the blue here, and this is matched up with the orange here. Now taking it where we left off, this is what we're trying to move in. This is what we're trying to get into the right position. So I need to move the orange one on top to match with this. So I'm going to move this orange center, 4x4 center, which is taking this 2x2 corner with it that's already put in place, and move it to the top. D-R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. Okay, so with that said, watch what's going to happen. I'm now going to take this yellow and orange. You're going to find this yellow will match with this yellow of the 2x2 portion, and this orange will match with this and this orange. So I go like splat. And now what I have is I have this whole thing in. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it to the center area here. D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. Now that I have this there, I can now move it in. I can now move this 2x2 sheet in. And as you can see, these two blues will correlate with these two blues. These blues here were not the correct ones. See, these are not the right colors, and I just go bang. And there you have it. I've got my first 2x2x2 block of my 4x4 correlated with the 2x2x2 corner. So that's the first one. Okay, so that was pretty fun. Now that we're feeling more enabled by our strategy, let's go for another one. So what's another color that correlates here? Why don't we do red, white, and blue? Is there red, white, and blue? Yeah, red, white, and blue. Okay, and it happens to be just next to it as well. So red, white, and blue, let's put this on top so I don't get confused, which I'm apt to do. Okay, so these are correlated over here. Let's go ahead and find the red and white to match up with this. So where's red and white? Right over here. Okay, I'm going to take this, move this in to create my 1x1x2 line. Now let's move this to the top so that we can move this back into here. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, and splat. Okay, so I have this in over here. Let's correlate that with this as well. Here is the red and white over here, so let's move this down to here. D, nope, again. Seems to be matching each other pretty well. Move this into here. So you've got the block over here. Let's move this to the top side. Like that. and move it in. Okay, so we have the same pattern as here. So now the next step, just like before, we're going to find the white, the blue and white. And when I find the blue and white, I've got to match it with, in this case, the white center so that I can create my 1x2x2 sheet. Could it be this one? It's hiding out over here. Well, is it? Blue will be here. Yeah, so this is actually it. So what I'm going to do is move it into the white one over here, so you can see that here. Now I got to separate it from this. Boom. Okay. Now that I've done that, let's wheel this one back around. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to move this to here, create my 1x2x2 sheet, move it to the top side. Once I've done that, move it back. So I still have my 2x2 bar over here, and I've got my 1x2x2 sheet here. So similar technique, I'm going to find my blue and white, which is where? One of these two. Which one? Is it this one? Yeah, it's this one. Now before I move it in, I have to match it to the proper center. Now in this case, it's not going to be here, it's going to be here. So the blue and white is actually going to match up to the center, which is going to be blue and red. I have to match it up to a blue and red center. Blue for here and red to match up over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on top and find the blue and red. Well, here's a blue and red, and I think it probably is the correct blue and red. Here's blue and red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to move the blue on top, so I'm going to move this out of the way. Let's move the blue on top so it can match up with this blue and red over here. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. So what this tells me is that this blue and red is not the correct one because it's not matching up with this blue and white. So this blue and white doesn't correlate with that. Let's just make sure. Yeah, okay. So I've got to find another blue and red. So you can see this blue when it's on top doesn't match with this. So another blue and red right over here. So blue and red is over here, which unfortunately is trapped within this. I see it over here. I've got to separate it out from these two because otherwise I'm going to drag this with it. So let's move this upside down here. Okay, here's a blue and red. It's now separated out from this 1x1x2 block. So I'm going to take this guy and move him into the proper blue and red. We're going like 1, 2. So this blue and white is moved with this proper center. I'm now going to take this, move him over here. Yeah. Move them over here to match up with this 1x2x2 block. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. So you can see this is over here with the proper blue and red. This red is going to find a very nice home over here, but let's get this back first. So this is back over here. Okay, so this is the blue and white that I want. However, I have to turn this around so that I can get this back here. Because remember, I originally flipped that to free up the blue and red. So I'm going to move this to the side, then take this and flip it around. RD. So, okay, so now I've got my blue and white. Simply move it over here and bang. So this is matched up to here. I've got my 1x2x2 block, and I just move that top side. RD. Okay, so that is equivalent to this. You can see this center is dragged along just like the center over here. So now what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the red and blue. Red and blue is over here. It's already matched up with one of the blues here. I just have to match it up with a red center. I'll just move this over here. Here's a red center. Let's move this down over here. And keep going. Okay. Take this, move it into here. So I have this part over here. Move it to the middle. Now that I have that, I move this back here. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to move this to here without messing up this. The way that I'm going to do that is you move it in. You know, it's actually easier to show if I put if I flip these two. You don't have to, but it's just going to be easier to demonstrate. Okay, so basically what I need to do is I don't want to ruin this, but I want to move this to here. So what this algorithm will effectively do is flip-flop these two top portions, these two 1 by 2 by 2 sheets with each other. The way this is going to work is you move it in, and then you move it once more out. By doing a corner swap, then you can do another U move, which will move this into here, and this will accept this 1 by 2 sheet over here. If you couldn't follow that, just watch what I do. Move it in, move it one more over so that it's out, then do a corner swap. 2R U, 2R UI, 2R, turn the puzzle, 2R UI, 2R U, 2R, do one more U, and bang, there it is. You're going to see them both in. So we got to do something similar while coordinating it with this 2 by 2 by 2 corner. So you can see that this is here, but I don't have anything in yet. So I need to correlate this red and white, this red and blue, for the edge that's the center that's a blue and white, and a red and white. So let's see what we have. Well, here's a red and white over here. The first thing that I want to do is let's move this away from here so I can do all the action. So move it out, and go RIDI, RD, RIDI, RD, and bang. Okay, so now I'm free to do what I got to do here. The blue's up here. I'm looking for blue and white, which is actually over here. So the blue and white is over here. So once again, I need to somehow coordinate this. I got to move this blue on top over here because this is the right one. This is the wrong edge, but we've got the right center. The center's just in there. And there's only one center that I can use. So the way that I can do this now is let's take this and just move it down over here. Okay, this is down over here. I'm going to take this, move it out of the way. Well, yeah, move it out of the way. So now I can take this blue and white and bring it over here so I can move this out of the way. Okay, actually I'm going to keep the blue and white here and I'll tell you why. I'm going to move this back over here. Now that I got the blue on top, I can take this blue and red and move the blue on top. RIDI, RD, RIDI, RD. Okay, now that I've got the blue on top, this blue will match with this blue center over here, the blue, specifically the blue and white. So now watch what's going to happen. I move this in, so I got the blue and white over here. I'm going to now move this down. I'm now going to turn this upside down so that I can match the red one in. RIDI, RD. Okay, now I got the red one ready for action and I simply move this out over here. Bang. So I've got the proper blue and white. Now I got to match the red and white. Well, I've already got it matched up here, red and white. The problem is I can't just move it in because that last center has to correlate with the 2 by 2 edge. So I've actually got to move this away. I can't put that in yet because I have to move it to the proper 2 by 2 corner, which is this, red, blue, and white, red, white, and blue. So that's the proper corner over here. So I need to move this away from this red and blue because it's not properly placed yet. So what I'm going to do is bump it out. Then I'm going to take this and move it to the side over here so I can get it out of the action and work with it independently. Alright, so I've got the red and white here, and I go splat. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to take this white and red, and I need to move it into this center here. So the red is going to end up over here, and the way that's going to work is I'm going to go 1, 2. You can see the red lining up here and the white lining up here, and let's move the red to the top. RIDI, RD, RIDI, RD. Red is at the top. I can now move this back to bring this back into here, and I've got this 1 by 2 by 2 bar which is in the right center but completely rotated wrong. But now what I can do is I can take this red and blue, the proper one, and move it to the red over here, the red and white. So I move it over here, splat. Now you can see this whole thing is lined up, and now it's super easy. I'm going to take this and move it over here, RIDI, RD, RIDI, RD, and simply move this in. And now I've got my 2 by 2 by 2 block. Now I got incredibly lucky. I always find out that every time I do a demonstration, I get the luckiest of all configurations. Easiest way for me to solve a puzzle is to do a demonstration, and it just happens to be in the easiest configuration. Because notice I didn't have to move it out and then move it back in. In other words, I didn't have to flip-flop like I did over here, which I could have done with this. But anyway, so that brings that back into here. So now we get to the last two centers. Last two 2x2. This is going to be a little different, or actually a lot different from what's going to happen here. So let me tell you what's going to be the same. And what's going to be the same is I'm going to take corners, I'm going to take all my corners and match it with all my edges. I'm not going to worry about the centers as of yet. So now you can see that pretty easily we're able to get all of these corners and edges in. We just have the centers that are out. Now in a true AI solve, I have a way of getting these in without doing too much messy stuff. But that's because I have equivalent centers here, and I can borrow on that. I don't have equivalent centers over here. So the next step is let's do exactly the same thing. Let's get all of our corners and edges together, because then we're going to do an algorithm to move these guys in. So red and blue, well, I see that these are already in. So I'm going to take this, move this out, then flip it around until it matches into here. Now there's so many different variations that can happen, so bang, so this is in. Now, there's another caveat. When you put all the corners with all the edges, you have to make sure that they're in the proper 2x2 corner colors as well. They don't have to match positions, but they do have to match colors. So for instance, this over here, this yellow, blue, and red is in the correct place, as is this. I just have to make sure that the final move to join all the corners with the edges still keeps them in the same place. So what I'm going to do is move this around. RD, white and orange is going to correlate with this. RD. So I'm going to take this, move it here, then move it to the top so that this blue and white can be freed up. And simply move this back. Okay, so now this is blue and white, which can match with this. So this can come over to here, like so. Now I can turn this upside down, which will correlate the rest with each other. RD, and splat. Okay. So now you can see that all these corners are in. Don't worry about these. Now, here's the thing. The fact that these are in the correct position has absolutely no meaning at this point because they're about to be batted out. So what we're going to do is we have to correlate these 2x2 corners, which out of pure coincidence happens to be in the right configuration with these guys, but it didn't have to be. But as we start moving these guys in, these centers in, we have to correlate with the independent movement of these 2x2 centers, and this is the real challenge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do an algorithm that has a very specific 3 cycle. I do have a tutorial on how I came up with this algorithm, but basically it was born out of doing the AI megamorphinx, and I had to find a way because of the bandaging to make that happen. But what this algorithm is going to do is it's going to move this center to here, this to here, and this to here. Yeah. All right, the only thing I'm going to be able to show is that this red will be here. Now here's how this is going to work. This borrows on the concept of generating an algorithm out of a commutator by doing a move and undoing the move and doing a middle move. So basically, I'm going to define that if I were to do a clockwise rotation of a 2x2 block, then you're going to be doing 2 sets of RIDA-RD. So one set is RIDA-RD, RIDA-RD. It brings us down to here and back up again. 2 sets, it brings it back down and up twice. And that's going to cause an overall clockwise rotation. A counterclockwise rotation is just 1 set of RIDA-RD, which is down and back up. So RIDA-RD will bring it down here, RIDA-RD will bring it back up, that's 1 set. So once again, a clockwise rotation is 2 sets, a counterclockwise rotation is 1 set. So the way that you're going to start off with to move this red to here, this white to here, and this orange to here, is you start off with a clockwise rotation of the right side. So it's 2 sets, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, that's 1, R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, that's 2. Okay, so that was a clockwise rotation of the right. Then take the top U and move it from right to left. Now do a counterclockwise rotation of the left. So it's clockwise of the right, move it to the left, counterclockwise of the left. So that's 1 set, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, and now move it simply from left back to right. And now you reverse it. So now we're going to do a clockwise rotation of the left, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, that's 1 set. It's 2 sets. And now we move it from left to right, like so. And we do a counterclockwise rotation of the right. So it's just the opposite. R-I-D-I-R-D, D-I-R-D, and simply move it back. Now that's the majority of the algorithm. The rest is getting things back. So back to the right, we're going to do a clockwise rotation of the right. So that's 2 sets. D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. And I'll go from left to right, like this. And now we do another clockwise rotation of the right. So this is our second one. That's 1 set. Here's 2 set. And then simply move it back from right to left. Boom. And that's it. Now, it's not in the same position. To get it back in the same position, you have to do counterclockwise rotations of both. I'm going to do this one just to demonstrate it, which is 1 set. So you can see we move the red one in. And if you were keeping track of what the colors were doing, the red moved to here, the white moved to here, and the yellow, the orange moved to here. So that's what that does. Clockwise, move it to the left, counterclockwise, back to the right. Clockwise, move it to the right, counterclockwise, move it back to the left. That's it. And then clockwise, move this back here, clockwise, move it back. It actually flows pretty well. Okay, so how do I translate this to here? Well, bear in mind, this center that I moved is correlated with these two. This center is correlated with these two. And this center is correlated with these two. So what's going to happen is that this will go here, this will go here, and this will go here. So we have to decide what needs to go where. So red and orange, let's move this into red and orange position. So not yet red and orange, yellow rather. There's that color blindness again. Okay, so this red and yellow will move into here, which is fine. This yellow and this white and orange will move here, which doesn't do anything. And this red and blue will move here, which also doesn't do anything. So all that's going to happen is I'm going to put one in over here. Now notice this is in here. So what if I was focused on the blue and white? Well, here's the blue and white over here. So why don't we do this? Just to move a little bit more in, this blue and white will end up, well, we have to move it over here so it can end up in there. RD. Okay, so this red and yellow will end up here, which doesn't do us any good. This will come over here, which doesn't do us any good. But this white and blue will end up here. So by the end of this algorithm, that will place this. But watch what's going to happen with our 2x2 edges. So we'll go ahead and do the algorithm. Clockwise rotation here, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. That's 1 set. 2 sets. Move it from right to left. Counterclockwise over here. It's 1 set. D-I-R-D, and swiftly move it back. Now we take this on the left side and do a clockwise rotation. D-I-R-D, move it from the left to right. And then do a counterclockwise rotation on the right, and swiftly move it back. Now we do a clockwise rotation on the right, like we did before. D, R-A-D-I-R-D, and then go from left to right. And now another clockwise rotation. D, R-A-D-I-R-D, and move it back. Okay, so now you can see this is in and my blue and white is also in. Let me do a counterclockwise rotation on each one just to move it back to its original configuration, just so you can see. Okay, So indeed, this is placed and this is placed. None of these are placed. But watch what happened to my 2x2 corners. The white went to here, the orange went to here, and the blue went to here. So the 2x2 corners rotated clockwise. These 2x2 corners rotated counterclockwise. Blue went here, red one here, and yellow one here. What that means is I have to coordinate the last move to not only put in the final 4x4 centers, but also to properly rotate the 2x2 corners. And that's it. That's how you structure that. So what I'm going to do is, these two are in, so I need to take this and move this into ready position over here, which correlates with this center over here. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. Okay, so yellow and blue will go to here. This yellow and red will go here, but this is already in, so we don't really want to shove that out. D-I-R-D. So this yellow and blue needs to make it to here, which means I've got to do the algorithm twice. If I do it twice, this will go here and then will go here. This will go here and then go here. So that's my orange and yellow, so that will end up here. And then this will go here and then will go here. So my red and yellow will end up over here. Which means that by doing the algorithm twice, I'll have solved the whole thing. But what will happen to the rotation of my 2x2? Well, it'll rotate once, so this yellow, this orange will be here, and then it'll go over here. So by doing the algorithm twice, I'll have it all coordinated. As you can see, by doing it twice, this yellow and blue will go here and then here, so it'll be in. This white and yellow will go here and then here, orange rather, so it'll be in. And this red and orange will go here and then here, and it'll be in. And in turn, this will do 2 clockwise rotations, and then you will have got it. So let's go ahead and do it and see how it works. So one turn of the algorithm, clockwise rotation here, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, and again. Move from right to left, counterclockwise rotation, so it's just one set, and then move it back. Do the same thing here, left, clockwise rotation, R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, move it from left to right, now clockwise rotate, counterclockwise rotation rather, and then move it back. All right, that was it. Now we just go ahead and do a clockwise rotation here. And now move it to here, and another clockwise rotation. And then move it back. Okay? Now I'm going to do a counterclockwise rotation of both of these in order to get it back to the original position. And just to make sure we didn't make a mistake, to check our work, you can see that this red and yellow will end up here, this blue and yellow will end up here, and this orange and white will end up here, and we'll do one more clockwise rotation and watch where the sparks fly. So once again, clockwise rotation, D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, from right to left, counterclockwise rotation, and then pop it back. Same thing, starting on this side, clockwise, D, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, move it from left to right, counterclockwise rotation, and swing it on back. Now, clockwise rotation, and move it from left to right, and finally, counterclockwise rotation, or rather clockwise rotation. Now is not the time to mess up. And now you can see, we're going to move it back, and everything will be fine, splat. And now you can see that my final 2x2 blocks have been done. I have now fully reduced this to a 2x2 by doing that coordination, bearing in mind how that algorithm works for these guys and what it does for the inner 4x4 centers and for the 2x2 corners as well. And then it's just a matter of solving it the way you would any 2x2. Not a day in your life you couldn't do a 2x2 solve, right? Well, maybe there was a day. This isn't over here. And you can do it with a method of your choice, whatever floats your boat, whether you want to do it for speed or style or fun. Bring this on in here. And you have now successfully done it. So there it is, the AI solve of a 4x4. I welcome you to try it. It's another variability of the solve of a crazy 4x4 version 2, and that is the answer to the challenge. Congratulations to anyone who tried, and especially anyone who succeeded. More challenges to come if you'd like. Thanks for watching.